Working late at the office had become a routine, the building quiet after the standard 9 to 5 bustle settled. On a particularly ordinary Thursday evening, the silence enveloped the workspace as I typed away, the only sounds my fingers on the keyboard, and the occasional hum of the evac system. Everyone else had long gone, and the office's sprawling layout felt more cavernous and eerie in solitude. That night, around 9 p.m., the usual tranquility was pierced by the sharp ring of my desk phone. Startled, I answered. There was a moment of silence, before a distorted voice whispered something unintelligible and the line went dead. Assuming it was a prank from one of my colleagues, I shook it off and returned to my work, but the sense of unease had nestled itself firmly in the back of my mind. Minutes later, the lights flickered and went out, plunging my floor into darkness. The only light came from my laptop screen, casting eerie shadows across the room. Heart pounding, I reached for my phone to use as a torch, and dialed building security to report the outage. No answer. More curious than scared, I decided to investigate the breakers myself, thinking maybe I could solve the issue. The backup generator hadn't kicked in, which was odd for a high-spec building. As I navigated the darkened corridors, the flashlight cast strange, dancing shadows against the walls. Reaching the maintenance room, I fumbled for the door and pushed it open. Inside, the air felt unusually cold. I shivered, attributing it to the building's loss of power affecting the heating. As I reached for the breaker box, I heard a soft thump behind me, like a door closing. I whipped around, my light slicing through the darkness, but saw nothing. The eerie silence made my skin crawl. Trying to keep my composure, I reset the breakers. The lights flickered but didn't hold, and the darkness enveloped me again. A sense of panic rose as I exited the maintenance room. The feeling of being watched was palpable. My pace quickened, footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Then, clear as day, I heard it, a low moan echoing through the corridor, followed by the distinct sound of footsteps. Not wanting to find out who or what it was, I ran back to my office, slammed the door, and locked it. Panting, I grabbed my things, ready to leave when a shadow passed under the door crack. Someone, or something, was out there. I backed away from the door just as a slow, scraping sound came from the other side, like someone dragging their feet across the carpet. Suddenly, the power surged back to life, flooding the office with light. Bracing myself, I opened the door to an empty hallway. Nothing was out of place. I rushed to the elevator, hit the ground floor button, and didn't look back until I was out on the street. I've never worked late alone since then. My colleagues laugh, thinking it's just an urban legend meant to scare the new hires. A story often whispered about in dim bars after office hours. But whether it was my imagination, or something truly inexplicable, the memory of that night lingers, a creepy reminder of the office's darker side, hidden just out of sight, when the lights go out.
It was a chilly November evening when my friends and I decided to explore the abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town. The place had been closed for over a decade after a fire ravaged part of it, leaving a charred and eerie shell. The local lore was rich with stories of ghost sightings and strange occurrences, perfect material for our thrill-seeking group. Armed with flashlights and a considerable dose of naive bravado, we pushed through the rusted front gates. The hospital loomed before us, its broken windows like dark eyes watching our every move. The air was tinged with the smell of mold and decay, and as we stepped inside, our lights barely cut through the oppressive darkness that filled the hallways. We wandered through the corridors, the silence so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your ears. Our footsteps echoed off the peeling walls, the sound occasionally mingling with the distant drip of water. It was Alex who suggested we head to the psychiatric wing, supposedly the hotspot for paranormal activity. As we approached the wing, the temperature dropped, our breath visible in the flashlight beams. I joked about it being the ghost's way of saying hello, but my laughter was cut short when we heard a sudden, sharp bang from the end of the hall. We froze, every sense heightened. A door, somewhere in the darkness, had slammed shut. Cautiously, we moved towards the sound. The door to the records room swayed slightly on its hinges. I pushed it open, the creak of the old wood unnerving in the stillness. Inside, file cabinets and papers lay strewn about, a testament to the chaos left behind after the fire. As I shone my light over the walls, I noticed something odd: handprints, small and charred, staining the white wall. They looked disturbingly fresh. "Guys, look at this," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. My friends crowded in, and we all stared at the handprints, a sense of dread settling over us. That's when we heard it, a soft giggle, chillingly clear, coming from right behind us. Spinning around, we flashed our lights over the empty room, but there was no one there. The giggle echoed again, mocking, and fear gripped us. Without a word, we turned and ran, not stopping until we burst out of the hospital and into the cold night air. Outside, panting and wide-eyed, none of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "Did that really just happen?" he asked, his voice unsteady. We all nodded, the experience binding us together in silent agreement. We never returned to the hospital, and whenever we recount that night, a part of me relives the visceral terror of hearing laughter where there should be none. The encounter remains a favorite story to share, a creepy reminder of what might lurk in forgotten places, waiting in the dark.
I had just moved into a new apartment in a quiet neighborhood where the trees outnumbered the people, a stark contrast to my previous city life. My first few weeks were peaceful, a serene escape I'd long desired. However, one Tuesday evening, my sense of security was shattered. It was nearing midnight, and I was deep into a binge-watching session when a sharp knock rattled my front door. Puzzled, since I wasn't expecting anyone, I paused the TV and listened. Silence returned as quickly as it was broken. Assuming I'd imagined the knock, I resumed my episode. But then it came again, urgent and louder this time. Heart pounding, I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. A man stood on my doorstep, his face partially obscured by the hood of his jacket. I didn't recognize him. He knocked again, his gaze fixed directly at the peephole, as if he knew I was watching. "Can I help you?" I called through the door, my voice steadier than I felt. "I think you have my phone," he replied, his voice muffled, but frantic. "I tracked it here." Confused and wary, I responded, "I haven't found any phone. You must be mistaken." He insisted, growing more agitated. "Please, just check. I really need it back." Something about his desperation didn't sit right with me. Rather than opening the door, I grabbed my own phone and called the local police station for advice. They recommended keeping the door locked and confirmed they would send an officer. As I waited, the stranger became more desperate, pacing and muttering to himself. Through the door, I told him help was on the way, hoping it would either pacify or deter him. Instead, he stopped, looked around, and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. I'll just wait here then," he said, settling down on my doorstep. The police arrived within minutes, and after a brief conversation with the man, they escorted him away. The officer returned to explain that the man was known to them, often troubled and confused, and no phone had been traced. They assured me they would handle it from there. Relief washed over me as they left, but sleep eluded me that night. The image of him sitting on my doorstep, waiting under the porch light, haunted me. I kept replaying the incident, each time wondering what might have happened if I had opened the door. The next morning, bolstered by daylight and the need for reassurance, I installed a new security system. Cameras now adorn my front porch, providing not just security, but also a sense of control. Since then, every knock comes with a flutter of anxiety, but the cameras offer a comforting buffer of safety. I share the story often, a harrowing reminder of the night a stranger came knocking, turning my sanctuary into a place where vigilance became as necessary as the key to the front door.